But along that way, I realized like this has to be our voice and this has to be our culture. This has to be our way of doing business. And I'm never going to find that from some template of a guy that did it already in California or somebody that calls himself a marketing expert. And while I was trying to look for that silver bullet, I started kind of accidentally going down the route of sharing a lot of my experience. A lot of my success in sales and marketing has been built off of a lot of my mistakes I've made on rehabbing and being a landlord myself. So people love to hear from mistakes. And I started building out all these different videos or lessons around a lot of mistakes I made in the industry over the years, whether it be as a property manager or as an investor.
Welcome to the Property Management Success Podcast, where we interview leaders in the industry to uncover the secrets to profitability, efficiency, and achieving true freedom, whether it's your time, money, or lifestyle. I'm your host, Tony Cline, and I'm here to help you build a wildly successful property management business. Let's get to it. Hey, everybody. Today, I'm here with Mark Ainley, a founding partner of GC Realty and Development and podcast host, and we're going to dive into both of those things quite a bit. How you doing, Mark?
I'm good, man. I'm happy to be here with you, man. I like hanging out with you and talking.
Cool. Well, welcome. I know I asked you to send over a bio, and so I was just kind of going through. You and I have known each other for a while, and we've had some pretty cool experiences outdoors. Maybe we can jump into that. Maybe we won't have time, but we've spent quite a few hours in the Grand Canyon together, and that was quite an adventure and an experience. But some of the other things I saw on your bio, that you're the co-host of Straight Up Chicago Investor podcast, and I know that that's been gaining some traction. And maybe we'll talk a little bit about how you got into that, how it's benefited your business, and what you want to get out of that. And but in addition to that, over the last 20 years, you've renovated more than 500 properties, managed more than 7,000 units, leased over 4,000 properties. You've been featured on CNBC's TV show, The Deed. You're the co-host of Chicago's AM 560 Real Estate Revealed radio show, and I know you're speaking all over the place. And so let's cut back to all of that and what you're currently doing. So you're currently managing over 1,200 doors, and over the last few years, you've been featured in Inc. list top 5,000 fastest growing companies in the United States. Mark, that is a ton of stuff you've got going on. How you handle it all?
Oh man, I feel when you write it versus when you hear someone else say it, like this one of those appreciation moments. Like, man, no different than I was just saying this with my partner the other day. We recently went to broker owner, right? We were all there, and those are the moments where you realize how far you've came, or how much you've done, or some of it might be how much you messed up and then recovered from at the same time. But yeah, no, the whole living in I don't know if you read the book Gap and Gain, but the whole make sure you're not living in the gap and always thinking about the gain is kind of crucial for when you get this far along and you have these rough days or rough weeks or whatnot.
Yeah. So I've read The Gap and the Gain, but for those who aren't familiar with that, why don't you share a little bit about what that concept is?
Well, it's really easy to especially go somewhere like NARP and broker owner and listen to everybody's like wins, right? Not many people stand around and talk, or not many people get on stage or stand around and talk about how horrible things are, or how bad of a week they had, or the stupid lawsuits that they got into that they're 100% their fault, whatever it might be. And you hear all the good things. It's really hard to not compare yourself, and no matter how far you came, there's always somebody in front of you. There's always someone doing better, or someone maybe online that looks like they're doing better. And it's easy to fall into the man. I wish I'm still not there. I still wish I was further or whatnot. Versus really looking back. For us, we're this year 21 in business, really looking back and seeing how much we've accomplished, or stopping and seeing how much you accomplished. And that's the real gain. And when you start thinking about where you've been and what you've been through, that's where you really have the opportunity to, start looking forward in a productive way, not in a, like you're not equal or not good enough as other people, maybe your peers or whatnot.
Yeah. Yeah. So over those 21 years, you've grown quite a bit. So how big is your staff now?
So we have 63 people. I believe it's right around 30 people are remote, and the rest are local. The one piece of advice I always give people, that if you're starting new, go remote first and then bring local. I know one of the culture issues we had was bringing remote staff in and like treating them equal, or thinking they could do just as good a job. And if someone has the opportunity in there, maybe 100 doors and looking to make the first hire remote first, and then come local. It was always advice I've been given.
Yeah. So it's funny because in the pre-show right before we were hopping on, you were talking a little bit about the fact that we're recording here on a Monday, and you were jumping in and kind of just dealing with Monday issues and trying to communicate you and your vision of what you want to try to accomplish. But with 63 people, I've got to imagine you've got a little bit of a hierarchical structure. It's not simply a flat structure. How are you structured, and how do all 63 of those people, not one by one, of course, but like how do you fit them together? Is it departmental, pod style, portfolio? How do they all fit together?
Yeah, so we have our leadership team, which is made up of the finance. It is basically the department head. So finance, marketing. I'm sorry, finance, marketing, sales, which to me are we follow EOS. So we have Cliff, who acts as our integrator. He's kind of an integrator and visionary. We have the head of maintenance, so we have the head of property management, and we have and all of them have people that report under them. So those are the majority of our managers. Then we have a couple of middle level managers that then have a handful of maybe customer service in front of them or leading the client service team. So how we're broken up though is we really have a resident service team and a client service team, and you could kind of think about what they do individually. But then we have specialists. So then we have a lease renewal specialist, we have a collection specialist, we have a uh, you know you know project kind of turnover specialist. That's all they do. And we really chunked it out to have individual roles. We have someone that's all they do is underwrite applications. We have my marketing person that's all they do is work on marketing. We have one person onboarding, just all that data, pulling all that data from the client and putting it into our system and making it all mesh. That's all she does all day. So as we've grown, we've been able to create full-time positions out of these individual specialty areas of specialty.
So I'm curious about, so you've got everybody that's kind of doing their own role. How are you taking your vision of what you want the company to be? Because I'm assuming you're not selling the company this year. I'm springing that question on you, but I'm assuming that's the case. Am I right or am I wrong?
No, correct. We are not selling the company this year.
Okay, so if you're not selling the company this year, then you probably have been thinking, what's the next year going to look like? What's 3 years? What's 5 years going to look like down the road? And how do you take what's in your brain and what you would like to see the future of the company look like? How do you communicate that down? And the reason I'm asking and kind of drilling into this question is you've got a pretty big staff compared to what most property management companies are just out there in general. Just statistically, most companies are of a smaller size, therefore they have a smaller team. And you've been able to create a much bigger team with a much bigger portfolio. How do you keep that thing moving forward? And how do you take what's in your brain and where you want to see the company go and communicate that through the organization where everybody's moving forward on the same page?
For those people that are wondering how the heck we have 63 people, I'll just one notch here is we do have in-house maintenance. So of those 63, 9 of them are technicians, and then we have obviously the supporting staff that are all in-house. So we run all that stuff through us. So the vision, so our BHAG, back to EOS, our BHAG is to get to 10,000 doors in 10 years. We're about we're a year and a half into that now. The BHAG then comes in handy in two ways for us. It's one, recruiting people. You got to get people to buy into the why they should come work for you. I think that's a little different these days than it might have been 10 years ago. It's kind of people have more purpose, are more purpose driven when they're choosing the next employer. So that's been very beneficial in being able to articulate that story for that. But then internally, and this is where I'll admittedly say we ran into issues where when you tell our team, man, we're going to get 10,000 doors and they're having a rough Monday, like getting 10,000 doors does not sound attractive to anybody. So you have to, it ends up having a couple different storylines of like, you got, in order to get to 10,000 doors, we have to be making these type of decisions, or we have to be thinking about what we have to do year 3 and year 1. Or we have to be building out this infrastructure, starting to think about this infrastructure for this over here. So it's kind of incrementally building to get to that big. But with the team, then it ends up being more of the support. Like that just means our managers have to be that much more thoughtful about what they're thinking about in their head, because they're overwhelmed with what they got to do today, no matter what. We all know it's a tough business, it's grinding, and it's thankless at many times. But if they're just like aggravated that, like, listen, this out is 1,200, I'd see it at 3,000 or 5,000 or 10,000. That's where our managers have to come in and hey, paint the picture for them, the vision for them of, hey, this is something that you can you grow into. Like, eventually what we're going to need to be that high is we're going to need a much more many more leaders within the organization that we want to take from inside the organization. So that ends up being a career opportunity for people. And that's the message that ultimately offsets the, oh man, it's hectic today, and how's it going to be like when we're that much bigger?
Yeah, I think that's really good to take that approach. I always say that people long to be a part of something great. We've through social media and all of this, we're supposedly have all these easier ways to connect with people, and we're supposed to have tighter and deeper connections, but it's not the truth. We're looking for that one or two things that we can really align our identity with and say, this is who I am, this is what I'm a part of. It's not my whole identity, but I identify with these people and where they're going and what their mission is. And so if you can create a great team and a great vision and growth opportunities, as you mentioned, I think that's really what people are looking for these days. As you mentioned, people are more mission driven at this point. And do you have something else to
Community.
add to that? Yeah.
Yeah, I should say, I don't know if this is new on my radar, or it's just new in what we're just in today's world of like that whole community, the tribe, right? Whether it
Yeah.
be with PM Health or be with my podcast community, like everyone just wants to belong to something and be part of something that's bigger than them for the most part. But it then helps people then clearly define if they don't want to be part of that. We all hear talk about people that don't, wrong people, wrong seat, or wrong people on the bus. Like, if you at least lay it, what I've realized, the more we lean into what we want to have, the easier it is for people to identify that they don't want to be part of that or self-select themselves out even.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. A lot of my clients, when we lean into our full signature program, one of the things we talk about a lot is building championship teams. And when you focus on, if you're on this team, you are building a championship team, you're becoming a championship player. Some people think, that's a little overboard for me. I just want to come to work and get a check. That's totally fine. You're not going to do that here. You're not going to do that with one of my clients. But there's plenty of places you can go and just get a check and put in your time and go home. But we're not doing that. We're building championship teams where people can rely on each other and belong. So I
And you
really
said
appreciate
team.
that.
And you
Yeah.
said team too. Like, I really got away from over the years the whole family thing.
Yeah.
Like, because you can't fire your family. You can hate your family, but like you still got to see them. Like the whole team. Like, and I think even when you approach it from an employee or community standpoint, it ends up being team is again back to the community word. It's like, hey, listen, you can earn yourself right outside this team, but most of the time it's hard to kind of disconnect yourself from the family. And
Yeah.
we used to do that. We're like a small family, and we've really changed that over the recent years too, because there's really two different kind of thought process.
Yeah, absolutely. And I don't want to dig too deep into this because there's a lot of great stuff I want to cover with you. But the difference, since you brought that up, the difference between a family and a team, everybody knows that one person that works at a family company and they work there just because they're family. And you have to earn your spot on a team, especially a championship team. You have to earn that spot. And that's what we want to create, is an air or an atmosphere that we're all trying to be better. We're all trying to make each other better. And when we have a weak player, you can't have a weak player and still win the championship. Everybody's got to be a top performer.
Yeah.
So, well, let's
Great.
switch gears a little bit and talk about, you mentioned growing from where you're at now, 1,200 doors, to eventually the BHAG at this moment is 10,000 doors. Let's talk about, how are you positioning yourself to grow to 10,000 doors? What are you doing to, either in your sales and marketing or through business development or your community outreach that you mentioned? What are you doing to make this dream, this BHAG, a reality?
What we've been working on recently is more of understanding what our ceilings look like, right? If we get 2,000 doors and we have 10% churn, no matter what, we got to bring out 200 doors just to break even. And that 200 that break even number gets higher and higher as you go up, where it's like, all right, so what point are we going to have to pivot into more multifamily or pivot into more acquisition? Because we can't do that all through organic for the most part. But so we're starting to look at some of those ceilings there with that on the sales side of things. On the operational side, it ends up being like, hey, this is not scalable. You hear that a lot around the office. Like, we can do it that time, and this will solve this problem, but that's not scalable. Now, we've actually we took that as a learning lesson. We probably took that too far the first year of like everything we're trying to do is trying to like this is not scalable to 10,000 doors. But it's like, all right, maybe that's not something we got to worry about scaling until year three.
Yeah.
So this year we kind of took a step back off the like it's got to be scalable to 10,000 doors today to work fit perfectly in our process or how we do business. So that was a little learning lesson we had in the last 18 months.
So as far as, and I agree, there's two different things. There's the sales aspect, bringing them in the door, and then, and which is a feat on its own to be able to bring in, to get to 10,000 doors, you're going to have to bring in way more than 10,000 doors just because over time we all churn properties out the back end. So we're going to have to bring in those doors, but we also have to create a system that supports those. So I want to talk about operations in a minute, but I want to circle back around and really hit that the business development and the sales and marketing aspect. And I know one of the things you're doing is the podcast, so I'm sure that plays into there. But what are you doing to try to grow your presence in the marketplace?
I never had a marketing background. I always tell this story, but 2018, I this when kind of the buzz around our industry was like, operationalize sales and marketing, right? And I spent the whole first year calling people like Jordan, Wayla, and stuff like that. Like, hey, you got a guy? You got a guy that can come in and just like can I buy a template from you of how to do this? And he said I went down a bunch of different rabbit holes, but along that way, I realized like um, this has to be our voice, and this has to be our culture. This has to be our way of doing business. And I'm never going to find that from some template of a guy that did it already in California or somebody that calls himself a marketing expert. And while I was trying to look for that silver bullet, I started kind of accidentally going down the route of sharing a lot of my experience. A lot of my success in sales and marketing has been built off of a lot of my mistakes I've made on rehabbing and being a landlord myself. So people love to hear from mistakes, and I started building out all these different whether it be videos or lessons around a lot of mistakes I made in the industry over the years, whether it be as a property manager or as an investor. And that kind of started creating this community that I didn't, again, I wasn't calling it that at that point, but kind of created this need, or I saw like, man, I can really help a lot of these people. Because a lot of these people are having these same issues, or a lot of these people don't know they're about to have these same issues. And that's kind of how the podcast got born. I would talk to when I 18, 19, 20, I was sales and marketing with a marketing person kind of doing some of the legwork. And I didn't replace myself until 2022 for BDM wise, but it was kind of me that whole time. And I knew I can only talk to so many people on a weekly basis. There's only so many people I could reach only so many people that want to hear from me that are actually calling me. So that's kind of how we started talking about the podcast, and that's where the podcast is born. We're on year 4 of the podcast. So at this point, and we've been able to just reach that many more people and help people avoid mistakes and kind of build that community. And that doesn't help your SEO. But the content you take from taking podcasts and shopping, or the stories you create, or the events you throw, because now you have a community and you're marketing those events, and you have a merch store. We've played into all that stuff where now that ends up turning around and helping the SEO, because people then Google up the group and it ties you to the podcast, or the podcast ties you to the GC website. So a lot of that's kind of all came together. And then along the way, just continuously trying to figure out marketing is a moving target, which I used to hate. And now I kind of like, because I realize that not many other people are putting the resources or the time in to figure out what's next and what's the best way to get, hack the Google algorithm, however you want to call it, or get ahead on the SEO in your particular market. So it's kind of cool now.
Yeah. One of the things that I really like about sales and marketing is that we're all just bombarded with so many advertising messages these days that everything has just become noise. But if you can figure out what your target client is looking for and you can speak directly to them, it's that reticular activating system that's a part of your brain that says, this is important to me. I'm letting it through my filter. And so it's just kind of like when you bought whatever car you're driving now, when you first bought that make and model, you drive it off the lot or you drive it around that first week and you start noticing all the other cars that are driving around there, because that thing, whatever it was, that car made it through your filter, your reticular activating system filter, and it said, this is important to me. And I love the mystery and the science and the math and the psychology behind figuring out, what can I say, what can I do, what can I produce, what can I share, what value can I give that will allow my message to break free from the noise and make it through their filter, so that now all of a sudden we're connected. And I feel like you've done a really good job with that, with your podcast and your events. And so um, tell me a little bit about how the events and the podcast is building your presence in the community, and touch a little bit more maybe on the events that you're doing as well.
Yeah, before you go further, that's the new coolest thing right now. Is trying to get people's attention, right? I can't even quote the number, but the massive amount of minutes that get uploaded to YouTube, like every minute or
Yeah.
every hour, is just like a crazy number. So that's what you're competing with. Everyone's attention, right? That's the goal. Get people's attention. And
Yeah.
there's a really good book out there right now. It's called Hook Point. I read it a few months ago, but I don't know the author offhand. But Hook Point is awesome, and it's all about kind of grabbing that you have basically 3 seconds to grab someone's emotional attention. So, but going into the other thing I kind of learned on the marketing side of things, and we took this and we do this on both the property manager side and the podcast side, is you know you and me could be on a podcast or whatever, and it's like, all right, so the one thing that really killed me at first, like, man, 1,000 people are listening to my podcast every week. I have no clue who they are really. I don't know how. How do I get them to call me? Like, I want to talk about property management. Like, how do I figure those things out? So pretty quickly we started, to offer these downloads. Like, hey, you want access to off-market properties? Sign up for, sign up here, or you want the checklist for the 10 things you need that most landlords mess up on before moving a tenant to their place. Download here. So we're able to start to collect emails like that. That's so for me today, 2024. The name of the game is like, how many emails can I get? How much can I build out that list in my niche Chicago market, which at the same time, Chicago is huge. So I'm very grateful for just being located here. So, but we're always, I'm always about the whole, how's it go? Give away the secrets and charge for the implementation. So here's everything you need to know, but you can also hire me and we'll do it for you. And that's really that's what we've gone down with the messaging for both. But at the same time, when we built this community around the podcast and we have these events. So it all started, I think it was PM Grow 2019. There's a guy that went up there and he's like, $1,000, I'll show you how to throw events. And this is the whole system. And I remember my partner, Cliff, he's just like, dude, I think you've got it for us. And I don't think I ever did anything with it because I hate events here in Chicago. It storms one afternoon in the summer, dude, no one goes out, like everything, electric's down. No one does anything for that whole night. It snows or it's too cold in any of the other 8 months, like things get canceled. So I was always discouraged by events. So what the podcast gave us opportunities is we created an audience and we created this community and we have an event. And now for the event, we charge people, it's $50 to come in there and if you don't show up, honestly, I don't care. Don't get me wrong. But like, it's less of a, like, I threw this event, no one showed up. But now you're able to get people out there and you're able to help maybe put other valuable resources in front of them. At the same time, you have all their information where you can continually provide value to them while at the same time saying, hey, don't forget, we got lease only services. Don't forget, we got property management. And it becomes, it makes you authority, right? I think I'm lucky enough that in my market, even some of my property management colleagues will refer our podcast because they just know that it's good content and they know that we act in the best interest of the investor in the end of the day. If I get some business out of it, that's awesome. And that will come and it's going to happen. But ultimately we're out there to just provide value and be able to help, hopefully circle back and it gets paid forward.
So for somebody that's thinking about, hey, I like this idea. I think I'd like to throw an event. I'm curious, is the $50 that you're charging, and it could be any amount, but you just happen to be charging $50. Is that more of a behavioral? Is it a profit center? Is it a behavioral commitment? Is it a price anchor? What's the main purpose of the $50? Just help you cover funds, or is it like whoever shows up, they've got skin in the game, so they're going to automatically assign value to the event? What's the purpose of that?
Yeah, I think it's both. I think we've charged upwards to $100 for, I think when we did our a party last year and we had less people, but it covers the food, it covers the place we're at. And then, sometimes we make some profit. Sometimes our goal is just break even, if anything.
Uh-huh.
But yeah, no, I think it's always when you take out your credit card, you're always going to be more committed to going. And if you're gonna pay $50, you're probably definitely going to go. But then it gets people out. We've thought about turning it into profit center, but we haven't. But here, I'll go down another thing that I started doing this year. We took in our office, we have, a 20 by 20 room that it's in the basement, so it was kind of yucky to start, but we cleaned it up. It looks really nice now. I actually moved in studio podcast kind of recording down there, but the room was to be for events. And what we've done, we're gonna have our third one here in May 23rd, is we started Grit series, which I love that word grit, but it's GC Realty Investment Training. So it just worked out great for the acronym.
Yeah.
But what we do is on Saturday morning, I get, we invite 25, 30 people out. We charge $10 for it. And again, that money has nothing to do with anything more than I want you to sign up and make sure you're coming to a Saturday morning or make sure you're serious before you sign up and take the spot of somebody that probably would come. That's probably more for that is, but that's been a great success for us as well too. We get up there, the first one we talked about, we kind of go through a whole series. Don't get me wrong, I am sort of making up as we're going, but I've started from the beginning of problems, things you got to learn about screening in 2024. Then the next one was actually screening a tenant. This next one we're doing in May is about what you need to do before your tenant moves in, to have the place rent ready. And we'll just kind of keep down. Our goal is to do 6 of those events this year. And again, we get their emails, we get their, we can continue to drip from them. We actually already got a couple lease only deals from it. One turned into property management. So that's a very easy way to do it, that we use. And what I'll give people the advice on it is most mortgage lenders will always offer up their meeting room to do something like that. If you don't have the space, or say you're a promoter or some sort of title company, most of those guys will, if you allow them to sponsor it for free or just in exchange for the room, you can always have that type of space. So a lot of people are like, I don't have space in my office. Like, don't let that be your hang up. It's really easy to find space from one of these mortgage guys these days.
Yeah. I love it. Okay. So this is helping you move forward from the 1,200 doors to where you're going. But if you were to start over, because we've got a lot of people that are listening to this that haven't quite made it to where you're at yet. So if you were to start over and look forward from, say, 50, 100 doors, 200, somewhere where you're still kind of learning and growing and putting your infrastructure together. And I know we are all constantly changing and that's always evolving over time. But if you were to start over, what would you be looking for mistakes, or how would you do it if you were to start over again?
Oh man, we got enough time for that. But that whole question. But a couple of things. I'll tell you the big ones. One, I would have never had an office. And we own our building now. We could lease or grow into whatever we want. But at the same time, I think we're in this world where you could run a property management company with a remote team. And I think if you do that from the day one, you're better off. And then two, I think I already said this, is I would hire remote people before I hire local people and grow into local people. Three, I think you have the one thing that I never saw coming. Well, so here, I'll tell you this. So starting back at 1,500 doors, the one thing I never did was I was always 6 months behind the person I had to hire. And that was something that probably capped us from growing early on. And if I would have made those hires, and I'm not even sure if it was financial limitations now I think back, or I didn't want to manage people, or I wanted to keep it simple, or I was afraid to give up. It might have been a combination of all those that's just didn't allow me to take action, right? Until it's just like you wake up and you're like, holy crap, I'm so overwhelmed, I need somebody. That's the worst situation being, because then you hire the wrong person.
Yeah.
You hire the first person with a pulse. So understanding, kind of having a roadmap of what, hey, when I get to 50 doors, when I get to 100 doors, that would be something too. Now, also the other thing that I would be very careful around is, I think it's pretty well known that when you get business, when you first start off, you really take whatever business you can versus the business you should. And depending what you want to be, or I would be very clear on what you think you're capable of or can do. We were very heavy on C and D class properties early on, but it's because we were investing in C and D class and we knew it. And we were boots on the ground still. I was pretty close to the front line, but as we've grown, we've gotten away from that more because it's harder. It's a harder learning curve to bring new people in the organization. You deal with a lot dumber problems. And it just is far more difficult to scale. So understanding kind of what class you want to stay in or pivot away into or out of over that time, kind of having that roadmap, or at least that forethought. And the other biggest thing is just I never, we all get into management because we know how to manage properties. No matter what your story is you probably knew how to manage properties, or you're the finance guy of your best friend that knows how to manage properties. And I never learned. It took me way too long to understand how to manage people.
Mm.
And honestly, the manage people thing ended up kind of growing on me at the same time I started learning more about the having the mentality of adding value to other people. I in 2018, 19, I learned, you think about that. We're in business 15, 17 years before I can even acknowledge I actually even was starting to learn how to become a manager of other people. But when I was thinking about with the marketing piece, and I get on the phone with you, Tony, and I'm like, oh man, this is how you got to do it. And just think about when you get here, you got like, I would help you kind of create that roadmap and add value to your life. And I'm like, man, I should be doing that with my own team members. And that helped put management in a place that was all of a sudden attainable to me, like instantly. And I was able to really just start having, I started enjoying the one-on-one times I was having with my team members versus like, all right, I gotta have a one-on-one week today. Let's get it done as fast as we can. and and the whole adding value. And when I realized now, the whole adding value to other people, that's really what helped me get into the management piece. Now, some people won't go for that. That's not everyone's way they handle people, but you're going to hit a ceiling if you don't know how to manage people, or you don't have a layer of people that manage people. You can manage just one person and that person manages 15 other people, however you want to set up, but you still got to know how to manage that one person, or at least have an idea of what that looks like.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that when you're looking at managing people, you've got their activities that you have to manage, but you also have to manage their growth and their trajectory and the value that they're getting out of the role. And we spend a lot of time on the people management side in our consulting business. And one of the things that has come to light is that every time you as a manager answer a question, a how-to question for your team, you're actually weakening your team, because you're answering a question that you should be providing resources for them to be able to answer themselves. So it's not that we want questions to go unanswered, but we want to give them resources and training and get really clear on what our policies are, and then make sure that they understand, here's our core values, here's the filter that we make decisions through, and give them the ability to make answers or make decisions on their own and come up with answers on their own. And so what we train people to do is every time your team comes to you, don't give them the answer. Every time you give them the answer, you make them weak. But every time you ask them a question, what's our policy say? Or what is our policy around that? Then they can either answer it and say, well, we looked through the policy manual, we don't have anything. Then you can say, well, what would you do in that situation? And you let them come up with what the policy would be. And if it makes sense, you say, okay, great. Send me an email or Slack or whatever the official feedback loop is, and say that will now become part of the policy. But you create the authority, the autonomy, and the ownership for them to be able to fill that role. And that's how you become a good leader of people. It's not the one genius with 10 assistants. It's, I want to surround myself with people who are smarter than me in what they do. And I want to assemble the Avengers, if you will, where they all have their own superpower and they don't rely on me other than just to, set the future vision of what we're going to tackle or accomplish next.
Man, that's one thing I didn't know what I didn't know. I didn't know what coaching was. You're highlighting a coaching, and like that is, that was kind of one of the things that we really went deep on as an organization, probably about a year and a half ago. It didn't really stick across the whole organization, but it helped me. It helped me in my marriage, even and my kids, and like all that stuff. Like, but the whole kind of coaching aspect of kind of you ask the questions and spend the time helping them find the answer, or really think through it, helping them think, so you don't have to help them through that same scenario again. And I think it was The Coaching Habit, I think that book, but there's a couple good coaching books out there that I would point out that maybe we put in the show notes, that I think understanding that mentality versus, here's the thing, as an owner, just as a human, we love getting things done, or feel like we're doing things. So when someone runs in, they have a problem, you feel good as the manager just giving the answer. Like you got your dopamine hit, like bam, you go do this, and that'll solve your problem. And that is the
Yeah.
worst thing as managers we could do. It's like we have to literally take that extra couple steps. Like, well, what do you think you should do? And however your process is, and that's something that I would definitely, if I could go back 10 years, like that'd be a big one to learn sooner.
Yeah. All right. Well, speaking of going back 10 years, let's go back 20 years. You and I have both been in this business for over 20 years now. Can you believe it?
Yeah.
Uh, it's been a while, but I'm not going to ask you to forecast or predict where we're going to be in the 20 years from now. But where do you see the industry heading, and what do you think about its current evolution?
Oh man. So I love our industry. And I get very, if I talk to someone who's like, hey, I'm thinking about, I got 100 doors now. I'm thinking about, maybe I manage 50 and I'm managing 50 for my buddy. And like, I was thinking about maybe growing up. And I love getting on the phone with people because I'm like, listen, we have an awesome industry. We're very immature as an industry. All this great things have happened. And I start rattling off all the things in the last 10 years. Now there's actual ways to finance companies. There's some place, venture capital money is looking at us. There's roll ups. Like there's all this exciting stuff that's happening. Technologies combining with global talent, combining with the ability to just scale companies larger past what we used to be at 250 doors for an average management company in the United States. I don't know what it is today, but like all those things are super exciting. And I always tell people this, we always talk to point in the industry to, it's only like 30 to 40% of properties in the United States are professionally managed. And I always point to Australia saying that, they're about 20 years ahead of us and they're about 85% professionally managed. And they have a lot more regulation. And you see what's happening around here in the United States. There's definitely always more talks and more regulation. If on a local level, it's not always happening as well. But you take the 35 or 40% that might be professionally managed right now. And even if that number went up 5%, call it the blue ocean out there, like went up 5%, there's not enough property managers to handle all that business. And that's so exciting. That's why it's so much opportunity. And that's why right now we could get together with NARPM, or I could, I have a group of 20 or so people here in Chicago that we all network on. It's like, we could get together, share everything we're doing, and not even be like threatened as competitors. Like we're all, the whole rising tide raises all ships. That saying, I always screw that one up, but
Yeah.
that is so true in our industry. And I'm really, if you can't tell by my tone and my hands flailing on the camera, like I'm really excited about our industry and where it's going. And that's probably one of the things that you could add. I think we've talked about this before. Like there's a lot of crappy things about this. It's thankless. No one ever calls and tells you you're doing a job. They're only called to complain. All those horrible things that at the end of the day, you're like, why do I do this? Like that's the opportunity of like where we're at in this industry in this time. And it's all about right place and right time. And I think where we're at right now in this industry, I think we're all in a good spot.
Yeah, I agree. And there's been a lot of talk about the legislation. You're seeing more and more legislation come down, and it's frustrating that government gets involved with things that we might not agree with some of their decisions, but at the same time, it makes us more and more necessary to be able to navigate that for our investors.
Yeah, more and more people don't want to deal with it, which means that's just job security. Like, listen, everything that comes up here in Chicago, part of the podcast and all the different, we were kind of voice leaders of like trying to fight and contest on behalf of landlords. But at the same time, if it passes, that just in all reality, it just means that less people will want to actually manage their properties and they'll hand it over, or they're afraid not to manage their properties because if they make a small mistake, they're going to get hit. So it's just a huge opportunity. And then the one other thing that I get excited about this industry, it's, everyone's always worried about the economy going down. If anything, when the economy goes down, we're doing that much better. And if you have a brokerage side of your arm and the economy's good, you should be killing it on your brokerage side for your company as well too. So I think
Yeah.
we have that, we're pretty good. We're like alcohol. Everyone drinks it when things are good, and then everyone drinks it when things are bad. So
Yeah. Yeah. Speaking of brokerage, just I don't know that we've touched on this. Do you guys have a brokerage arm or refer out your landlords that sell? How do you handle that?
no, we started as a brokerage first and foremost. We do, so another part of that, not part of that 1,200 units, we manage about 1 million square feet of commercial space, mostly like industrial, kind of the 60s, 70s, 80s built commercial, small multi-unit buildings. And so we do brokerage. Most of our brokerage that we do is for clients, the property management side or commercial. So yeah, I definitely think that's a big component to keep in house that you should not be referring out.
Yeah. Well, very good, Mark. This has been a lot of fun for me. I appreciate you coming on, and always love spending time with you and hearing your stories. We didn't get to touch on the Grand Canyon and our experience there, so maybe we'll circle back around and have you on again, and we can dig into some stuff that's more about grit and grime and stars and spiders with glowing eyes. I remember we saw some of those, but we'll circle back around. But as we close out, I want to ask you kind of our closing question. And I know you kind of touched on this, so maybe you're going to default right to that answer. Maybe you'll come up with something else. But if you were to go back in time, if you were able to go back in time and ask yourself or tell yourself one thing, if you were able to go back in time and tell yourself one thing, what would it be?
Property management specific.
No, I left no other parameters.
Oh, for sure. If no parameters, then I would, this is big hill I've been mounting my flag on lately. I would have sold less real estate. I sold way too much. I bought a lot, but I've sold way too much. And I think my biggest regret professionally is, all those properties I sold and made that 30 or 40 or even $100,000 on, I don't know where the hell that money's at now. And I know that property is worth $400,000 or $500,000 or a couple $100,000 more than what I sold it for. It's like, I wish I would have sold less property. So I am consciously trying to buy more stuff right now here in the Chicago market. On the residential side, we already have a commercial kind of fund that we do, but yeah, I would hold stuff longer and not sell it.
Yeah, I love that. I can't remember the exact quote, but there's a quote out there, something like, "You'll never hear an investor say 10 years down the road that they were happy that they sold that property." So
time is your asset. We always say that in the podcast. Time is your asset.
Yeah. Well, Mark, thanks for jumping on. I'll give you the last word to close us out. How can people find you? How can they get a hold of you? We'll put your contact information in the show notes, but anything you want to close with or promote, it's all yours.
Yeah, if you want to check out our podcast page, straightupchicagoinvestor.com, or our property management site, gcrealtyinc.com. Anything we have on there resource wise, if anyone wants any questions or if anyone wants to steal anything, give me a call, and I'll always help other property managers get stuff faster than it took me. So,
all right. Thanks again, Mark.
Thank you.
Thanks for tuning in to the Property Management Success Podcast. We'll be back with another value-packed episode to help you level up your property management game. If you've got something valuable out of today's episode, please share it with a friend or colleague, and don't forget to subscribe and leave a review so you never miss out on future insights and strategies and tactics. Until next time, here's to your success.